For our first episode, we'll be covering Magister Helynna. Helynna is a recently released battlebox caster for the Retribution of Scyrah. She's a totally new kind of caster for Ret, probably our first caster who really supports a large battle group. She really adds a lot of tactical options for Retribution players who want to bring more warjacks in their armies. And now her stats. Helynna's speed and mat are both standard, but she has a less than average rat. Her defense is a solid standard defense for a warcaster, and her armor is also standard. She's also focus 7, which is great. Helynna has 2 abilities on the back of her card, both of which are pretty helpful. One, she can repair warjacks base to base with her for D3 plus 3 boxes by using an action. Her second ability is Force Grip, which applies to her low power weapon both in melee and at range. Instead of dealing damage, she can push the model hit 3 inches in any direction. She has very good range on both her ranged and melee attack. Her feat is both defensive and reparative in nature. Inside her control area, she removes all damage points on force fields on friendly warjacks, and for a round they ignore the effects of crippled systems. Additionally, all friendly faction models gain plus 3 armor for a round. I think the most difficult part about this feat is that it wants to be a repair feat, but at the same time, because of the way the game is played, really you want to use it preemptively to protect your warjacks and protect your army rather than necessarily waiting until you've taken enough damage to trigger the feat, which can be risky because a lot of heavies in particular can disappear inside of one turn. She has a strong spell list that includes the following. Deceleration. Decel is a standard cost control range arm buff against ranged and magic attacks. The arm buff is standard for most spells. Force Strike. This is a low cost damage spell with a critical knockdown effect. It can be helpful on assassination runs or in a tight spot. Hand of Destruction. This is one of Helynna's signature spells, an offensive upkeep spell that gives her battle group an extra die on attack and damage rolls against the model or unit hit. The lowest die in each roll is dropped, which makes it basically signs and portents against one specific model or unit. It's also low cost. It bears mentioning here that Hand of Destruction will probably be upkept or recast almost every turn of the game. Obliteration. This is an expensive, large-sized AoE damage spell. It also has a high POW. Rhythm of War. This spell is the second of her 2 signature spells. It's a slightly expensive upkeep spell that allows her battle group to move 3 inches after all of their models have finished their activations. It's not too different from the old Mark II Reform rule. Helynna has 2 major abilities that we want to cover in this quick rundown. The first is her gun and melee weapon. Being able to move enemy models, in particular heavies, is an incredibly useful ability. The first thing she can do with this ability is to pull enemy heavies or critical enemy models towards Helynna's own forces and allow her army to take the alpha strike and remove that piece. This is very effective, but puts her close to the action. If her army fails to remove said model, that model could in turn be close enough to put damage back onto her. So it's risky when it's not done well or if your dice fail you. The second typical way to use this ability is to get her out of danger by pushing away a heavy that's gotten too close, or to consistently push back an enemy model that's particularly dangerous to try and mitigate its game presence. You can counter this ability somewhat by boxing in important pieces using other models, since a push can't move other pieces. It's a ranged and melee weapon, so counter magic has no effect on this. Bear in mind also that facing is maintained from the original direction and is not changed because of the push. Her second notable ability that we're going to cover today is her Rhythm of War spell. It's part of what makes her such an effective jack caster. Because it lets all warjacks in her battle group move at the end of her turn, what you'll typically see her field are battle groups with strong ranged weapons. At the start of the turn, her battle group will advance forward, fire, then retreat out of threat range using this spell. While most Retribution warjacks or myrmidons have ranged weapons, this likely means you'll see the ones with the strongest range play rather than a melee-centric battle group. In particular, Discordia and Hypnos are 2 character jacks to watch out for. Taking the lead in zone control may force her warjacks to engage with you before they're ready. If her battle group lacks heavy melee hitters, warjacks or warbeasts with strong defensive capabilities can run to engage her battle group and pin them down while soaking up the retaliation damage. And as with all Retribution armies, sniping out the Arcanist solos will limit their Warjack melee power and cut down on available focus. This is actually something you can do when facing any Retribution army. Looking online, the jury still seems to be out on what units Helynna typically takes alongside her battle group, but for the moment, Dawnguard Sentinels seem to be very popular. These essentially are reach weapon masters, and they benefit greatly from the protection her feet can give them on their way into the front line. In addition, it's also worth mentioning that Discordia has a special ability that gives an armor buff to models near her. This synergizes pretty well with the Dawnguard Sentinels. That's it for today's episode. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This helps us produce more videos for you, and we'll see you on the battlefield.